All right, so we're back. It's only been about 15 years since I've done this, and but this is a championship round show, formerly the Preacher's Corner Live, I guess you could say. Shout out to my old pal Jody. We did a show for a few years in the early 2000s, and shout out to all of the many guests and people that were involved in that old show. But it's been a long time, so I'll start here. Actually, I'll start probably around maybe in the mid '90s when I met my wife, and we'll go from there, and maybe go further back in future episodes. But well, the logo that you're seeing says things about the Wayward Preacher returns, and uh, having to say a few things before we get going. So maybe a little quick history of how we got here. I'll start when I met my wife Deb back in '96. Um, and then, like I said, we'll go back further in my history and further shows, or upcoming shows. We'll drop things here and there. But anyway, we moved to Wisconsin in 1998, of all places, born and raised in California. And we moved there so Deb could be near her father and her family. And so it seemed like it was way different culture shock for me. But anyway, of all things, we worked for a while at a casino, and we were driving through the town that we lived in. It's only a town of about 2,500 people, and there was a vacant storefront. And I said, well, that would make a good Mexican restaurant. And so we inquired about the place, and it was a great price, and it had an apartment above. So we went on the adventure of starting a Mexican restaurant, having never done anything like that. It was quite a ride. And anyway, so that lasted about 4 years, and we returned to Sacramento, California in 2002. A lot of great people that we met there through the restaurant. We had live jazz on the weekends. We met a lot of cool musicians in that time, and just a really, it was a great time. And but as they say, all good things come to an end. It came to an end, and so we ended up coming back to Sacramento, as I said, um, and started attending. Well, we moved in with my folks, and at that time, and started attending Capital Bible College in 2002. Um, and so we lived with my folks during much of that time, and a lot of great mentors through the years there. Chris Howard and Don Patterson and Bobby Jones and many others. Some I can't even remember names. I was trying to remember some of the names, but great time. And so we did that. We were there. I was there attending school. Deb would come with me and hang out there, and I would go to class, and it was good. Those are some good times. But anyway, so we're back in those days. They still had newspapers, and they had a religion section every Saturday. They would say what was going on at churches and things like that, and the local churches were doing different events and whatever. And there was a ad, or there was a advertisement for a tent revival, uh, and people really don't do those many very often anymore. That's kind of a bygone era. Seems like something that's more in small towns. But there was a tent revival, and it was a Saturday night in the summer, uh, and it was hot, and so we went out to this tent revival at a church, Showers of Blessings Church of God in Christ, and we actually had a great time. And I think I was surprised. I didn't know what we were in for, but we went back a few times, and we went back, and we joined in November of 2002, and you know, we went the weekend of Thanksgiving, but we didn't want to hold everybody up. I think it might have been Thanksgiving service, and we didn't want to hold everybody up. Everybody was kind of looking at us to see if we were going to join, but we waited till the next Sunday, and I was still attending school, and I think I got around, and so they kind of asked me to do different things involved with the men's ministry with a old friend of mine, Ulysses, and so we did that, and I preached my first sermon there in 2003, and that was a long time ago, and it's your first one, so You leave it up to your imagination how that first one went. So we did that, um, you know, and during that time, Deb found a job as an apartment manager, and kind of in the hood, really in the hood, and so we moved out. We was able to find that. I think our son was one. I think he was one or one or yeah, I think he was 1 year old, and so I became a licensed minister on January 9th of 2005, 2 years after I had started preaching with my good old pal Jody, and I attended that. We attended there as a family until 2013. So I preached there, was able to serve on the trustee board, help out with men's ministry, did some sound room, even did the beginnings of the live streaming. And if anybody watched the live streaming back then, it seemed like you were filming the pastor in a cheap camera from across the street. And that's how blurry it was. But but it's the beginning. It looks beautiful now if you go on their site and see, it's very professional. But I was in there in the very beginning and did it with a little webcam, and the sound was great, but the picture was just horrible. So, but anyway, so I preached, um, and serving in that capacity was really one of the greatest experiences of my life. Sometimes my son, I talked about it with him. He's 22 now, but I talked to him about that, and he said, "Dad, those sounded like those were really golden years," and they really were. I mean, it was so much uh, just so much joy and so much fun, just being a part of that and being able to preach so many times. The pastor was very generous with his pulpit, so we all got many opportunities to preach, and really a great time. But in that time, started what I just mentioned in the beginning, the Preacher's Corner Live. Did that from about 2004 to about 2008 on a platform called Stickcam, and also Live 365. And so this was before YouTube. It was video, and it was hundreds of people was on this platform, but it was really the early days of just doing things like that, live streaming. And it was really exciting. I mean, we started with basically nothing, with some cheap mics and DJ mixer that we got from Radio Shack, and just man, just kind of taped it all. It feel like we were taping it all together, but just attached everything together, and we were able to pull it off. Even do some phone interviews and stuff like that. But I have some laptops that a lot of that material was on, and some of the sound, it was it was pretty awful. It's nothing like today. But anyway, so we did that from 2004 to about 2008. Many great guests, Bible scholars, and just a lot of cool people that we interviewed. During that time, we worked with we would talk about sports sometimes, and we would talk about boxing because Jody and I were both big boxing fans, and we interviewed a guy that had a show in New York, uh, Bill Calogero, and he actually had us do a boxing show on his network, and we did that for a few months, and he enjoyed us, man. He really got a kick out of us. He thought we were nuts, but so we did that. We interviewed the great Harold Letterman from HBO Boxing, and some others, and just had a great time. So um, after Stickcam went out of business, I was in and out of doing that stuff with Periscope, which went out of business. It was owned by Twitter, Mixcloud, something called Haps, and just well, mostly would come back and play Christmas music during the holidays, which I will be doing on Mixcloud starting in October sometime. So we'll be back with that, doing the Christmas music on Mixcloud. So hey man, it was a stone age technology wise. I remember my first laptop. I think it had less than a 20 gigabyte hard drive. Now you can get iPhones, I think, with 2 gigabytes. But anyway, I always enjoy the internet, doing the broadcasting. It just gave you a freedom to kind of communicate not on the fly, but almost create things daily, and just share them as you went. You didn't have the time constraints or some of the, and I don't mean this in a negative. I don't mean it like it sounds, but some of the uh, almost performative pressures that come with preaching. I mean, you could go on, you could do a half hour, you could do an hour, you could do 3 hours. you could develop an idea throughout the day and just hit it that night and just go live. To me, I think I adapted to that format pretty well. I think I did, but that other people probably could judge that better. So our son was born, Winton. He was born in 2003, and Winton has autism and Klinefelter syndrome, and our daughter Brenda was born in 2007, and she has autism and Down syndrome and does not have the ability to speak. Actually, at this time, she lost that a few years ago, and we still don't know why. But things were going good, and these were really great years at the church. And Deb had a lot of back challenges. She had blown out her back putting Winton in the back of the car, and her back just totally just gave out, and she ended up having to have surgery a few years later, and it relieved it a lot. But she had a really tough time when we didn't have the insurance to get her the surgery that she needed. But then I eventually went back to working for the state, and we were able to have her get that surgery. Brenda did have open heart surgery at 4 months old. I'm just giving history. I don't want it to be sound like I'm just, it's just me. But I'm just trying to lay a little bit of a groundwork before we get things going and really jump in. So if you can be patient with that. But anyway, Brenda did have open heart surgery at 4 months old. Later, she had a few years down the road had titanium rods put in her back to help alleviate her scoliosis. So all these are happening, and we've had great years at the church, and just really not as much for Deb because she had to stay home a lot of the time, and she would take care of Brenda and things like that. And went in. We didn't get to go towards the tail end of it. We didn't go as a family together as much, and so it made it a little bit rough. But I ended up leaving the church and in 2013, and really just kind of walked away. And sometimes people might ask you, why'd you leave? What happened? It wasn't scandalous. It wasn't anything crazy happening. Um, it was, sometimes I think it was just weariness. I think that over time, for me, sometimes there was questions, there was doubts, and we all deal with those. It doesn't matter how ingrained you are in the church, but everyone deals with doubts. There's dark nights of the soul, as they say. And so if you don't deal with them and you squash them and you really don't, and you're not honest with yourself, it can lead you down a road that is not the greatest. But and we moved away from Sacramento, probably around an hour away, and so that made the transition of leaving. It made it easier, I guess you could say. But I turned in my resignation letter to the church, and it was probably 7 or 8 pages, man, just chronicling all my time there, and and thanking them for all they had done for me, especially with regards to the preaching ministry. I mean, there's no way at any other church that I would have gotten the experience that I received there. It was a total different world than many of the places that you run into these days. And I don't even know if that kind of mentoring or just uh, uh, putting people out there, I don't think that exists as much. I don't think maybe it does. I've been out of the fire for a while, or away from the fire for a while. But so years go by, man. We're at 2026 now, and visited church off and on in the town we live in, but I really couldn't connect. And it's no fault of the people or anything like that. Actually, a great pastor, and met with him several times, and had him and his wife over for dinner, and um, uh, just he knew that there was probably some maybe church hurt, or whatever you want to call it. I'm not sure that it was church hurt, but um, but over the years I stayed in contact with some of the Christians that I knew, and that kind of helps carry you. If you know really solid people. I think they were all preachers at one time at least. Um, and I almost preached a few years back. Almost preached for a friend of mine. Thankfully, he's still a friend of mine after that. But I just wasn't ready, and I backed out actually the week of, because I just He's remained a friend, thankfully, but I did back out and just couldn't do it. Of course, I still follow him online weekly on Sundays and Tuesdays and Wednesdays and sometimes even Fridays. Um, it's funny. I looked up on Amazon and I bought. I I was big on books in the past, but not. I didn't have a lot of books, but I did buy books. I did. I really like books, and I bought my first Christian book. Kind of. I went back uh, in 2023. I was buying some things, and I bought a Bible, and I bought some things, and I started buying things, and wasn't necessarily reading them, but I was just kind of building the library, and. Uh, but I've always been, like I said, a kind of a book hound. I even worked for about a year at a Christian bookstore back when I was going to school. Um, but through Deb and even my son and family over the last couple of years, I've actually been able to build a nice library. In my eyes, there's people that have thousands and thousands of books. I may have a few hundred or a couple hundred, but able to buy a lot of really good quality material. But just kind of reading it and working with it, but not really in church so much. Um, uh, so there's that. I mean, you just this. I'm kind of just winging it a bit. I have a few notes, but I'm really winging it in terms of trying to just draw a picture or paint a small picture of what's going on. So here we are anyway in 2026. I'm older, much older, much older, hopefully a little wiser, and hopefully a little bit more mature. But I think it's a cautionary tale for of of how you can't really get time back. Even if I go full out with what I'm trying to do here and really just, put my hand to the plow and go, you can't get that time back that that you lost, you know. Um, and when you're not doing that uh, and going to church the way you should, there's the residual or the collateral damage or harm that it might cause even to your family when you're not, you just kind of give up that spot. Say, we don't need to do that anymore, and so to me it just says to really don't sit on opportunities, because if they pass you by, time flies by so fast. I posted something on Facebook the other day of the kids when they're at the dentist, and they're so little, and I'm like, oh my goodness, where did all that time go? I don't even not sure even where we lived at the time, but it's crazy. But anyway, over time, um, through God's grace, by His grace, uh, He begins to draw you. You can't run forever. I didn't hear any voices in my head, but you get impressions or you get promptings or someone will say something to you, or you'll see something maybe on YouTube, or you'll see a book and you'll read some of that, and it'll speak to you. And God will speak to you through different things. Is my faith perfect? By no means is it perfect. I've been through a lot and seen a lot, and there have been a lot of great voices and friends and positive influences along the way, man, that have helped me. And I mean, going back even before '96, you know, some dear friends in the Catholic Church, a brother by the name of Angelo Cardinelli and Mark Schroeder, and later on Terry Long and Dan Reed in Wisconsin, who really helped me get on the road back, man. Yeah, I mean, just good people, Jody, my friend Bill, man, Alfonso, Ricardo, Larry. I mean, so many good people that have been there for me, and those are the last list. I mean, those are some of the guys that I still talk to and still are an encouragement in my life. But that's kind of a little nutshell, a very small nutshell. Um, that's where I've been. This is where I am. I'm way further down the road than I'd like to be, but I feel that I'm ready to take on this chapter and get going. I just got a message a few days back um, from our old church that I spoke about, and they're celebrating 30 years of ministry for the pastor, and we arrived at that church 24 years ago, so he had been there for a while. But things are kind of coming full circle. We're scheduled to go out to that celebration next month, but I just it just seems like the time is now for me to try and do this and see where we end up and where it lands. But it's called the championship rounds. We love boxing. I love boxing. Even my wife Deb loves boxing and UFC and all that stuff. But the championship rounds are at times when you really have to push and you really have to you find out what you're made of, because that's the regular fights and the regular struggles are what they are. But then there's that time that sets the champions apart, and that's the end of the fight. Can you make it? Do you have what it takes to get there, to get to the end? And I'm trying to find that out now. You cannot do anything about what happened yesterday. You can't, that if it's a wasted day or whatever it might be, but you can go forward. There's a scripture I want to share with you before I wrap it up, because it's going much longer than I thought it would. It says, therefore be imitators of God. This is Ephesians 5, chapter 5, verses 1 and 2. Therefore be imitators of God as beloved children, and walk in love, just as Christ also loved you and gave himself up for us. And that's what we're supposed to be, imitators of God. That's what we dedicate our life to. And it's another scripture I wanted to share, to share this, which is Ephesians, further on in the book, Ephesians chapter 5. It says, so then, be careful how you walk, not as unwise people, but as wise, making the most of your time, because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is. And that's Ephesians chapter 5, verse 15 through 17. I want to share it in a different version. This is Scott McKnight translated the New Testament, and I want to share it and see, give a little different colors to it. Therefore, look carefully how you walk around, not as unwise, but as wise, purchasing the season, because the days are evil. Because this is true, don't be imprudent, but understand what God's will is. And here's a quote by an old guy from days gone by, A.W. Tozer. He says, if God gives you a few more years, remember, it is not yours. Your time must honor God. Your home must honor God. Your activity must honor God. And everything you do must honor God. And that's A.W. Tozer. So I'm going to wrap it up. I might do another little one, but I think we're going to get started with the book of James, like I don't know if I mentioned that. Anyway, we're going to be doing a study through the book of James, and I'm going to start with James chapter 1, verse 26, and I'll give the reasons why I'm doing that, because I think that is an area of struggle for myself, and I think an area of struggle for all of us. But we'll talk more about that. So we'll see you on the next one. I thank you, whoever has listened, if anybody's listened. I hope this doesn't just sit out there. I hope somebody does listen and hopefully get something from it. And I want to thank you all for listening, and we will see you on the next one.